Cause's latest research on climate health and well-being. We're really, really excited to share the results of this survey. It was released this week, so some of you probably already had a look at the report. As you know, Root Cause has been doing these monthly pulse surveys on a variety of topics, be it COVID-19 and well-being, and a variety of topics related to social determinants, whether it's isolation and loneliness, financial security, food insecurity, and so on. So this latest research that we actually did in kind of loose collaboration with Senator Markey's office, he's very invested in this issue and particularly air pollution. We used it as an opportunity to build a relationship with them, and they provided some nice feedback on the questionnaire itself. And I hope that today's results can help all of your organizations move forward with this issue as it becomes increasingly a priority for the coalition, and I'm sure many of you. So I'm going to use today's time to walk through the results. The full report is posted on the Root Cause website, along with a press release that highlights some of the key findings. And should you need the report in a format other than PDF, just please let us know. We hope it's used far and wide, and we can send it to you in PowerPoint or whatever way is most helpful for you to integrate into your presentations. And then if we run out of time, I know we only have a half an hour today. As always, please just feel free to reach out with any questions or thoughts. Okay, so let's dive in. So here's just a key finding slide. And I think, if nothing else, I'm not going to read each one, but if nothing else, it's just really striking to me, the level of concern and also the amount that the public has around sentiment for making this a policy priority. So just to highlight a few, just that first bullet, 3/4 of Americans are at least somewhat concerned about being affected by severe weather. That's a pretty striking finding. It's kind of like, bam, from both a awareness level and a policy level. And then that third bullet down, nearly 9 in 10 believe policymakers should make the connection between climate hazards and health a priority. So as we think about the connections to Root Cause's other pillars, be it education or research, clearly there is the link there to connect the dots from research to advocacy. All right, so as always, our research gives the national findings. This is a nationally representative survey of 1,000 adults, and then it drills down on particular demographics. I'll show you on the next slide, but if you see an up arrow on the demographic slide, it indicates a statistically significant greater amount from other groups within that demographic. A down arrow is the converse of that, a statistically more negative or less percentage than other subgroups within that demographic. So here we go, first finding. The vast majority believe where one lives affects individual health and well-being. So this is really interesting. If you look at the green parts of this pie, the 50% and the 41%, that's where you get somewhat or a great deal. And you see, again, like over 9 in 10 basically believe that there's a link between neighborhood and health. When we think about the communications implications for that, I think they're significant. We asked in a previous survey about zip code and health, and we got a much lower percentage. So perhaps how we talk about it, neighborhood over zip code, resonates a little bit more with the public. And then when we look at specific demographic breakdowns, it really follows trends from previous surveys where we see higher income earners, those over 80%, those are who are college educated, and those who are parents, believing this statistically significantly more so than either lower income earners or non-parents or non-college educated individuals. Okay. When we look at the aspects that people believe connect health and well-being and where you live, we see neighborhood safety pop towards the top. And then interestingly, air quality. So this is an area, as many of you probably know, where Senator Markey is particularly interested. And I think, again, from a communication standpoint, as we think about how we talk about the connection between climate and health, clearly air quality is something that pops for individuals and that individuals are concerned about. So again, a way to talk about it. Look at climate and extreme weather conditions towards the right side, and that's 9% compared to 18%. So clearly the air quality piece resonates. And then here are just the demographic breakdowns. Nothing too significant here, but just again, so you have them. And then here we see, again, just a great concern, back to my point in the key finding slide about the percentage of individuals who are concerned generally about severe weather. And if you combine the somewhat and very, you get a significant majority of folks. And then just to call out on the bottom of the slide are the questions from the survey and the sample size. Okay, and then the demographics on this one, those who are very concerned statistically are higher for those who are under 45, and then those trends continue, college educated and parents. All right, so what about extreme weather are you concerned about? And there are many, many issues, as you can see from this graph. So again, thinking about those two green bars, the blue is I'm not concerned about this. So if you look at the green bars, it really looks like any number of these issues, the vast majority of Americans are concerned about, but a few rise to the top. So lack of access to clean water, electricity, lack of food, again, air quality. Only 9% report being not concerned about air quality. Something to explore, I think, going into next year. This was very, very prominent in the news this year. So again, people's concerns ebb and flow with what gets covered in the media as well. So this is something to explore about whether or not this level of concern remains. Let me just look real quick at the chat. Okay, thank you. All right, and then demographic breakdowns. Just one to call out, inability to leave. So this is towards the right where you see that 50% up arrow. Inability to leave if and when severe weather arrives. And a statistically higher percentage is concerned about this for those who are under 45, similarly with loss of employment. All right. More than 7 in 10, so that 26% and the 47% are at least somewhat familiar with the connection between climate hazards and community health. I think this is really important. So you could interpret this in one of two ways, right? Either over a quarter of Americans remain unfamiliar with this connection, or almost three quarters are somewhat familiar. Clearly, there's room to raise awareness and knowledge on this issue, but it does seem like there is a growing level of awareness around the connection between these issues. And then there was lots of demographics to call out underneath this question. So I kind of chuckle at this one, but males say that they're statistically significantly more familiar than females with this connection, as well as those who are younger. This is not surprising at all. But a lot of the climate advocacy work has been driven by younger adults, higher income earners. Again, like these same trends, you'll see it when we put out our annual report in December on our research findings throughout the year. A lot of these trends are consistent. So younger adults, higher income earners, college educated, and parents, whether it's level of familiarity, knowledge, awareness, etc. All right, policy. So one of our goals within Root Cause in this research is to really try to make the connection between our data and our advocacy. And you can see here, I think this data point is helpful for anybody who's on the Hill working to advance climate and health issues. And you can see just about 9 in 10 adults say that policymakers should at least make this climate hazards and health one of a few top priorities, and nearly half say they should make it a top priority. So I think this is another slide that is particularly helpful, I think, from a policy perspective. And then some of the drill downs here, you're not going to be surprised. You can see on this left column where it says policymakers should make this a top priority. It skews younger, higher income, and parents. And then if you look over towards the right, policymakers should not make this a priority. It skews a little bit older and non-parents. All right. So here, this question also resonates for me with previous questions that we've done in a number of our surveys where we see an appetite for the role of government in addressing some of these health equity issues, and climate is no exception. So here we see nearly 4 in 10 believe the federal government has the top responsibility for addressing this issue. Trailing behind that is state and local governments, and then individuals and families. And I think this is interesting. You know, it's not necessarily seen as a personal responsibility issue, but you also see individuals and families coming out above private companies or businesses or even community organizations. And then here are some of the drill downs where you see the role of the federal government skews more female, it skews older, and it skews non-parent actually. For state and local government, it skews younger. That I think is worth further exploring. I don't have a good explanation for those age differences on this one, but I think something worth thinking about. And then here we go. 8 in 10 Americans believe climate has at least somewhat of an impact on everyday life. So we asked this question in the context of current life, everyday life, and future life. And you can see here that it's about 8 in 10, a little bit less, believe that climate has at least somewhat of an impact on their daily life. It's a pretty striking finding to me to think that the vast majority of Americans believe that weather has an impact on their everyday life, but beyond just normal everyday, you know, sort of fluctuations in weather, but more severe weather. And then here are some of the demographic breakdowns, and it follows the trends from previous questions. And then here it is for future generations. So the previous question was nearly 8 in 10. This is a little bit over 8 in 10. So, you know, you can make the case that there's this sentiment that the impact will only grow on individuals or future generations when it comes to the connection between climate and health. Only 10% saying they don't believe it will have an impact. And I think interestingly, 7% saying they're not sure, which is, you know, relatively small. And then again, the demographic breakdowns, it's exactly the same in terms of younger generations, college educated, and parents. Income is not as significant a driver here. And then last question, how will climate impact future generations? And you can see here kind of these top 3 issues. I mentioned earlier that air quality kind of rose to the top, and you see it again here where you see this first real climate change will cause changes to the ecosystem. Weather will become more extreme or unpredictable. And then here you see the air quality piece will impact individual health. Lower down, you see housing. You see neighborhood impact by rising sea levels, and then only 7% say, I don't agree with any of these. And then here's the demographic breakdown. There's not a ton to call out here other than I think maybe this age difference where you see this 45 to 64-year-old group saying that weather will become more extreme or unpredictable, along with non-parents, which is kind of interesting. And then lastly, here are just some of the demographics. If you're interested in particular sample sizes, we can provide you with the raw data should you want to analyze it further, but here's the specifics of the sample sizes for each demographic call out. And here's my contact information should you want it. And I'm going to go ahead and look in the chat and stop my share. And please do post any questions should you have any. I know I went through that quickly. But I'm happy to take any questions or any thoughts about future topics or just any feedback in general about our research. And just briefly, while you guys are digesting this information, I mentioned a few minutes ago that we would be putting together an annual report, and it's not an annual report in the sense that it documents all of Root Cause's activities, but it's a trends and attitudes and perceptions report that pulls together our research over the past year and looks at some of the trends and themes that we've identified in our pulse surveys. All right, I see a question. What's the biggest takeaway you'd like attendees to take away from this research? So good question. I think that came from Hannah. You know, one of the things that I think is so striking about climate is, well, two things. One is just the general level of awareness, I think is pretty high, but then also the sentiment for the public will to address it from a policy perspective. We talk a lot about the public will being there, but is the political will there? And I think this research underscores that theme as well. And then in terms of responsibility for addressing these issues, you know, obviously individual and family and personal responsibility is always something that resonates in this country. But with a whole host of issues that we've looked at this year, both federal and state governments rise to the top in terms of level of responsibility. And again, that speaks to the public sentiment that these issues be addressed from a policy perspective, not just an individual perspective. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions, but thank you so much for attending this short overview of our latest research. Stay tuned for the trends and attitudes and perceptions research in December. And in January, we'll have a survey that's focused on the connection between mental health and health equity. So I look forward to sharing the results of that as well. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. Enjoy these 10 minutes and have a wonderful afternoon.